Mr. Town Administrator, you're on board next with Articles 16, 17, 18 for municipal maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The document you have in front of you is a breakdown of a lot of the items that you have requested information on. I think it's a little out of order from the way it was put on your agenda, so I don't know how you'd like to go over that.
Page 3, 17 is 16, 17, 18, right?
Yep,
Perfect.
Page 3.
yep.
Page 3, 16,
That
17.
also has 19 on there, pass over to fall town meeting, which is the school one, which I think that was a little pass happy on there, but might be the one concern I have for that one is just making sure that we have enough money in that fund, whatever they wish to set aside at that time. But that one we've already dealt with. Article 16, I believe Mr. Gifford has spoken to a member on this, Mr. Worthing, right?
What?
Mark Gifford spoke to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this is 16?
Yes. So.
You want to comment on that?
To break it down, 35,000 we rescinded from the school roof borrowing and now used to borrow for fuel pumps. The remainder of pump costs split between the water pollution control facility and the school. The reason it is that the water pollution control facility uses the pumps. The school also uses it for their buses and such.
What was the flammable thing that was passed last night by the selectmen for the water pollution control facility?
They have certain chemicals in tanks that I believe are flammable.
Okay, so it wasn't diesel or gas or?
I don't believe so.
What are you shaking your head at?
It was gas and diesel.
Was it
That's what they said last night. And
The only
But they
vehicle
don't
is
have their
the
own pump.
diesel.
It may be for their pump stations, the generators.
I can tell you, I don't know why because they pump that.
It was just a matter of a license, as I understand it. Okay,
So,
What are we looking at?
this is 16.
16.
I was wrong in that time, I'm sorry.
Wouldn't that also include chlorine?
I would
It
think-
should include chlorine as well, but you might want the specifics.
Yeah.
Chlorine's highly explosive, and to have any kind of a storage, you have to have a license. I know that for a fact. There's just said it.
On 16, here's my feeling on this. I'd like to see the whole $88,000 go into technology in the schools and wait until the damn thing breaks and doesn't work anymore, and we've tried our last piece of bubble gum on it to keep it going. And somehow have the ability to release funds to get a new system in there, but only after you're out of gas. I mean, there's no other option. Because it's a lot of money and it's running now.
All right, the only way to do that is to is out of the reserve account. And there's only $85,000 in this budget for the reserve account.
I think the simple response is, it's running now. Probably didn't run yesterday, ran for a little bit the day before. You're asking about, spit, bubble gum, and, I don't want to tell you what else is in there keeping it going. I was in there one day where they had a bunch of electricians in there pulling out the cupcake fans, and that's gone, so they're bringing that, doing all, because it's not just pumps, it's electronics going with the whole thing. So, you're probably looking at, you've hit the point where your maintenance of it and your costs are higher than you really need to be. Now, I can't, if you ask me for the numbers, I'm gonna look you straight in the eye and say, I don't know.
Okay, I mean, that was my, there's no question there's a justification and there's a payoff. But if you can delay it for a year, there's $88,000 that you.
The only thing I'd say that is 26,500 would have to be reduced because the water pollution control is not gonna buy books for the school.
Any other discussion on this, Donahue?
I'm just curious as to why we're doing two things in one article. Is that just to show people where the money's coming and?
We wanted specifics, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe through you to the moderator, is this acceptable to do it this way with both of these items in here?
That's the moderator.
We're comfortable if this article can fly with two parts to it.
According to council, yes.
Okay?
Okay, and this information that you're seeing on the separate sheet would appear in the explanation, because the warrant's already written, but it would be in the motion, correct?
Correct. We also have the option, speaking with the treasurer collector, of borrowing for the full amount on there, for the 88,000, which it's one of his recommendations when looking on it. It may be just a cleaner way to do it as a one-time borrowing than rescinding from a previous article, moving that amount over and such. There may some problems with, not really problems, but some reluctance of bond counsel to really go through this part of it.
I sort of raised another question here, but that's all right. So what do you want the article to read? You are rescinding that school repair, which we would want to do anyways.
We're gonna have to rescind that portion no matter what.
All right, and then raise and appropriate, it is a second issue, but you're using partially as the funding, or the lending, the borrowing cost, right? It's a little confusing there, I have to say that.
Yeah, the thought was how to do it without having to basically put 5 articles, put one together. It would be much easier if we could just put it as one article of borrowing for that.
All right, I'm gonna leave it that way, because if it becomes a problem, we can always divide the question. Correct, Madam Moderator? Fine. It's a procedural thing, we can always do a town meeting if people feel it's absolutely necessary. Ms. Donahue.
It's a procedural thing with regard to town meeting, but it's an accounting bonding issue with regard to the way it's worded, and I'm wondering if it isn't making it unnecessarily complex.
But that's not for us to decide, that's for the treasurer and the town administrator. I think, yeah, we can divide the question if it needs to be done. Any further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
I move favorable action on Article 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on Mr.
Is that
Ward?
on part A, part B, or part C of that?
So it gets more.
As written.
As written.
As written.
Is there any further discussion other than Mr. Ward and Mr. Wood? Tom?
I don't have any.
Oh, I thought you gave, I thought you
I'm
gave.
waiting to vote against it, wait.
No.
See no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. Oh, I forgot to ask for abstentions. 500. You're looking to withdraw 17, 18, and 19?
You can't withdraw 19, because 19 is vehicles for the school.
Or 17 and 18?
You could withdraw that on there, because my concern for that is, will they have enough money in that account, that money that they
Is that
set
what you're
aside?
trying to do now, is withdraw?
No, that's actually, in all honesty, I think I got a little happy with the cut and paste on that one. But it is something that, before we get to town meeting, I'd just like to have clarified. Last year, it ended up, we had a little bit of an issue with the way it was voted as to whether when it was voted, they technically had the funds in the account. So that's just a concern. I just want to make sure they've got enough money in the account to encumber. So if you look at it, if they knew that they were going to get X amount of dollars throughout the summer, that's what they're really looking to encumber. But when you're doing it at the annual town meeting, it theoretically encumbers it on the first day of July. And if those funds aren't in there, even though they think they'll get them in the next few months, you have an issue.
Well, they can't spend what they don't have, and the encumberment encumbers everything right off the top.
You can't spend
They're
what you
aware of
don't
that.
have, but it goes to the, excuse me, Mr. Chair, but it goes to how the DOR will take the way we voted our articles. If we don't have the money in the account at that time, you can have theoretically some issues. It raised a little bit of eyebrows with me.
So are we not voting on 19, you're not gonna pass over to town meeting, to the fall town meeting, are you?
19's fine.
In 19, I would leave on there right
Okay.
now. I'd like the school to let us know whether those funds are gonna be available on the proper day. 17 and 18, I would ask that they be moved over, because I don't believe that when this comes through, we'll have the enough money in there at that time.
I guess what we're saying is if it is legally okay, we're fine with the DOR, et cetera, then we're in favor, but if not, they're gonna withdraw it anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, I've asked Mr. Gifford
So why are you
for
hung up
uns-
about it?
Yeah.
17 and 18, and he's fine with them going to fall town meeting.
So he's gonna pull those, you're gonna pull those?
Yeah, the risk always being that they don't get voted on in the fall, or they fail, and he's already expended the funds for some of those items.
Okay, Mr. Ward, you had a question?
The, what I'm understanding from the money available in August are if Makepeace rents the bus. Is the income from other applications of the school buses that you're looking to build up $200,000 to buy newer vehicles? Is that what we're talking about?
That's the school's plan on Article 19. I'm just
Yeah.
making sure that on the day that this has technically been voted upon, the funds have been encumbered, that there's enough money for the amount of money that they wish to encumber.
Okay, so, but we could go back and see prior years what the flow has been.
No, you can't, you actually have to have the money in the
No, I
account,
understand
that's what he's
that,
saying.
but in making a judgment as to whether you are gonna have the money or not, you can see what it has been in the past.
You can roll the dice, correct?
But that has two different areas, not just earning the money, but the repairs are coming out of that as well. So, depending, I just don't think, if we don't have it, you should know probably by May 1st, May 31st, where you're looking at. You
Yeah, I
can
think
project.
what happened last year was they encumbered a certain amount of funds, then they used them on there, but knowing they would have them back. And you have to,
Yeah.
at a certain point in time, you can't do that anymore. So I think it just caused a little bit of an issue. We got through it because the intent obviously was one thing, but you just try and mitigate issues. That's why with the parking and the other one, I would just ask that they get held off to fall. We know what we'll have for the funds in there. That should probably be the cycle we follow from then on. So you build it, you take it out during the previous fiscal year, then you build it back up during the long summer months. July and August are obviously, 2/3 of the summer, and when we receive most of the revenues in there.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no action to be withdrawn.
Article 12, being done.
Article 12 is also being withdrawn.
Article 12 is for the kiosks. The harbor masters will not be funding that out of the waterways account.
Is there gonna be another article to fund it?
There will not be another article, but I believe we will have kiosks on June 1. The town will not be purchasing them. Actually, they will be under $25,000. They're a non-capital item. You don't need an article for it.
Yeah.
And we get the revenue from it?
Oh, don't start this conversation.
What? If it's too good to be true, it isn't?
No,
It's not a matter of the warrant.
So, okay.
you're right, so he's gonna cut me off because we've
I'll
argued
have
No, it's not a
about
matter of the
conversation
warrant.
afterwards, because I'm curious.
It's an open meeting law.
If we get kiosks, I'm happy.
It's open meeting law, okay? Next item will be Article 5, which was compensation of the elected officials.
Yes. That is on the page 1.
What's a registrar?
Compensation, that is also the registrar of voters.
Town clerk.
Ah, okay.
So that's the explanation.
That's Article 5, right?
Article 5, right, which is the compensation of elected officials, $63,371 for the town clerk, registrar $700, and town moderator $118 per diem. Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
That much? Is that $118 for every day that you work? for us.
That's every day that she
No,
works.
no,
Course that she
It
works.
says per diem, but what they meant to put is per hour, because it's
If she got paid, it was $118, it was every day that she worked for us. Or we worked.
She made more than us. She made more than you.
She's a bargain.
That's the most
Chair will
valuable.
entertain a motion.
I make a motion.
For
Move
favorable
action on Article 5 with the numbers provided in the handout today. Town clerk, $63,371.32. Registrar, $700. Town moderator, $118 per
Do I
day.
have a second?
Second?
Second, any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 500. Next article is Article 8, water pollution control.
Chair, that's also on page 1, mid-page.
So we're voting on 6,956,450.
Article 8, water pollution control wages, right. Well, the wages are 851,995, and the expenses are 6,104,495.
We've already voted on 8.
It was a,
All right, we needed those numbers for our explanation.
exactly.
We took it as a housekeeping.
Same thing on 9 too. We voted on that as well.
All right, and we're now, okay, so the EMS wages are $689.76, and the expenses $189,469, for a total of $874.45 for the record.
Right.
Right. And also 13 we voted on already. We just needed the numbers for our record. Oh, wait.
That was the list of revolving, that's the list of revolving funds,
Page 2.
page 2.
Nice chart.
Man, we're walking on
Oh,
through
that
this
looks
one.
really familiar, right?
Yeah.
The revolving funds is cost of, I'm sorry, council on aging, transportation, 210,000, library, 20,000, council on aging, social programs, daycare, 50,000, council on aging, activities, 50,000, recreation, $1, and recycling, $50,000.
You'll see, Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt, the major one is the school, I believe is the kindergarten, that they, by the town meeting vote, transferred over into a different type of revolving account that does not need to be requested every year. So we've removed that from the chart.
Okay, but
I'm sorry.
it's still subject to the total limit on revolving accounts, correct?
Which,
No,
It's not?
which is the one that doesn't need to be?
no, that's gone. The one that doesn't need to be there is
What
not
was the
there.
value of that one?
That was a large one. I believe that one was close to, I thought that was $100,000 or $200,000.
Yeah, it's up there quite a bit, that's what I'm saying, right, is that you now have an additional number of dollars available for revolving,
You're correct.
all right, if you so need to. Okay.
Are we sure that library's 20,000?
Did they increase that?
I don't know. I'll check, because I believe that we had this discussion last year on this as well.
Article 21,
Are we asking questions on 13 or not? Is that just gone by?
no, you can ask for it, I'm sorry. This was to fill in, but if you have a
It was
question
just
on
a,
the chart.
we've already voted on it.
Right, but you're welcome to ask a question.
Question?
Recycling does make $50,000 a year, up to 50?
No.
Would,
That's a ceiling. That's a ceiling. The most they could ever have in that revolving account would be $50,000. They cannot have a dollar more.
okay. What happens if they go over? Where does the money flow to when it spills over?
We would probably have to increase it there. We'd probably have to increase whatever the ceiling is. I don't know the particular remedy for it. We haven't had that issue in a little while.
None of these revolvers have ever gone over.
They've gone over in the past, but not recently, no. I haven't been involved with how to fix that. I wish we were making enough money.
Yeah,
that
no,
was
I
an
understand
everyday
that.
issue.
The recycling came in for a little heat last night in the selectmen's meeting. And there are some opportunities to make that a moneymaker.
And it would be processed through the recycling revolver if that was
Yeah,
done.
I understand.
So that's why the revolver's there.
Got it.
Read that, it's a pretty readable.
Article 21 is the reorganization. Where does that stand?
Sure, yeah, I didn't have, that was sort of my confusion on what the, I had provided the numbers on what it costs and what the changes are from the previous. I believe did I provide this committee job description on there? And I think I spoke to it on another meeting, so.
We need an explanation for it. I mean, we're not gonna write your explanation. So I know you gave us the chart, but the question is what are we gonna put in the book so that people can read it and understand what's going on?
Okay, my understanding was this was to vote on the article on here tonight, so I don't know.
We
if
had all the
that's-
information last
We
week.
have the information.
I thought it had, because it was a change, charge, you had to hold hearings and all that other stuff, so are we voting on it before the hearings, or should we wait till after the hearings?
You won't be able to vote on it before the hearing.
So you're gonna have hearings and everything you need done before town meeting?
We're trying like heck for it.
But that's, I thought, what we were discussing last week, there were other
Right.
issues.
So we'll have to table it.
If I may, I guess your question is whether the public hearing will be done before then or not, so that's the question of the board, because I don't think the public hearing would have, a public hearing is just an informational hearing, so.
There were other issues with the Department of Revenue as far as identification of, financial director versus town accountant. There were certain things, there were several issues that you had talked about last week.
We have a town accountant.
Well, I understand that, but how you,
Lost me.
not
Lost me
everybody.
too.
We had a discussion last week, I'm sure Bob could pull it up at a moment's notice, where some of the, as far as authorizations in the structure of the town and how things work, when you had a director of finance versus having a town accountant authority, or I don't know what it was, you were discussing, it's like, there were several things that you said, it was not just a simple change for you.
Oh, you had to have certain titles because the
Title.
law specifies you must have a town accountant.
So
So you can't change the
There
name of
was
the
a
town
charter
accountant.
change to this as well, was there not?
That's why we're doing it through town meeting.
Well, no, the charter says you have to, any reorganization has to, but I'm saying that what you have, the definitions in the charter for now does not include some of the titles that the title that you're talking about.
No, the title was never a problem with the charter for town accountant. It was state
Okay.
law in many instances says town accountant, and the question was it uppercase or lowercase? Because if it's uppercase, you have to have that official title in somebody's list of
Okay.
titles. Unfortunately, but that's the way it comes out.
I'm good with
Lowercase
that.
is,
Hey,
well, you
either
could
way
be
it's fine
anybody,
with me.
you
I
could be the
just-
bookkeeper.
If you wanna hold off and you wanna try and look at that, I have no problem.
Yeah, we can vote that next week.
Yeah, that's,
We can vote it next week if
Okay,
it's,
that was gonna be my point, because I don't see the need for us to wait till after the public hearing.
I don't either. So why are we waiting?
I don't wanna wait. I'm just
If you want to have this
saying.
resolved, that's fine, and we have a job description, but
we needed,
We discussed this last week. Everybody was, I think at that point, we were ready to vote. I
but we
don't know
don't
why
have,
we delayed it.
we don't have an explanation for the,
We don't have an explanation of what?
we don't have an explanation, do we? All we have is a chart.
Well, we had
If you're gonna
numbers, we
say
had
anything
dollar
to-
figures.
$20,000, $37,000 less. or something like that.
Yeah.
We had all that information last week.
Then very good. What? I know, but Mr. McDonald's gonna put the explanation in written form.
Okay.
Right,
What?
Madam Chair?
That's right, I think that's a good one.
Madam Chair has just appointed you to do the written explanation, Article
Of
21.
what?
Article 21,
Article
for the
21.
public.
I'll be talking to you tomorrow.
my new bestie.
I tried,
Yeah, now you are.
yes.
Can you entertain a vote?
I've been to his house, he can entertain.
No, I don't.
The chair will accept the motion for favorable action.
That's narrowing shots.
I would like to move favorable action on Article 21, the reorganization, creating
Yeah.
position.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, one.
Who abstained?
Me,
Frank did.
So it's for the,
4-0.
401.
401. Budget update?
The budget update, if you turn to page 7 of your document, is the newest budget document.
Can you quickly tell us what's changed?
Yeah, that's, this is, I believe, I want to confirm this is the format through the charter. We have FY12, what was expended, FY13, I believe it's actually what's supposed to be projected
Yes.
on there, and then the current proposed budget. On there, you'll see in the local rooms occupancy excise, there's an increase because a portion of that's not going to the
Community.
community events committee. It is not as big as you would have expected because for the last 2 years, it looks like that the motel excise has been decreasing. Hopefully, we are reversing that in the near future. Going down on the budget, and there are significant changes, so I think the best way to bring you the update is to go to page 10 and go to the medical insurance line. Previously, we had a number of $6,450,000 in there. I now have a number of $6,714,709. That is based off of a budget number of $6,387,226 for our health care and $327,483 for our dental.
Ow. It's $1 million.
And I do apologize because I have another column on that I will send to Kelly that showed the changes from the FY13 projected on there. One of the largest ones you'll see is if you go to page 9, I believe, let me go through there, page 8. You'll see we've taken money out of the town accounting expenses line, the town administrator expenses. Going down to the town planning, we've reduced those several $1,000s. Coming up until the top of page 9 on the police wages, I've moved the capital items in there in their budget of the $49,000 because it should not be voted on as a separate article. They already voted the 3-year lease on that. But if you deduct the $49,842,
What page are you on, Sarah? I'm sorry.
9.
Page 9.
Page 9, okay.
So the current balance stands at $4,392,380. However, when you take the police article, the cruisers out of there, and that is the last payment of a 3-year lease, those are not new vehicles. That is the old ones. I'd like to make sure that's out there. Brings us down to a number of $4,342,538, which is $141,958 less than the previous year's budgeted amount. They took the main brunt of that. Altogether, in this budget, compared to the previous, although it will not show it because the police cruiser article, as well as the $400,000+ put into the reserve fund, our budget for the general fund is actually $174,393 less than the previous year, or 1.72%. The remaining was when we received the assessment from the Upper Cape Cod Tech, it was roughly $100,000 lower. I had planned to put that in the school's budget, in the net school spending line. We were unable to do that, so the school stands at approximately $13,000 more than the previous year.
Is that gonna fly?
No, that's not going to fly with them, but that's what we have available.
Okay.
Now, this budget is what we'll be going to the report with, the FinCom's report.
That's what, this is the,
And so there's the open question of which, we got the school committee voting a number that's like 1,000,008 higher than the first. The charter seems to be a little nebulous as to which number is supposed to be used, whether you have to use their number or it could be adjusted.
I think there's, it depends on how far we want to go with it, actually. We can, this would be the budget that I'm submitting. If I have to have the school's numbers in there, it's something that I think I need town council to have a written opinion on, because
All right, so this
asking
is
me
your,
to bring an unbalanced budget forward is,
this is your budget. The question is whether or not, I don't know, Madam Moderator, what will we do? If the opinion is that the school's number has to be used, at that point we could amend it on town meeting floor even though there's no revenue to fund it. Is that what we would do?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I have to check with council.
Request has been made.
Request has been made?
What, to town council?
Yes.
Okay, as to what the procedure's gonna be?
To the specific issue, which was a question, I think, a year ago, is the budget brought forth by the town, actually 2 years ago, is the budget brought forth by the school committee, does the town administrator have to bring that forward or can it change?
Or can you modify it?
And I sent that question out to him this afternoon.
I'm just curious. Isn't it the TA's budget though?
But if you don't have it, I'll pull up the section. It had to do with the school committee submits their budget to the town administrator. There's no language that says that.
We have to accept it or we don't have to accept it? There's no language to
The
that?
language kind of says that's the budget that they submit.
It is quite nebulous. It says that they have to present their number. Actually, they're presenting it quite late.
They're gonna be a negotiation. Is it still ongoing negotiation?
yeah, just, we're gonna meet again on it. I have a strong feeling that I don't see the gap being fully bridged. I know the school has done a lot of hard work in thinking through there into lowering their number, but we're still, there won't be a $1.8 million gap, but there will still be a gap, is my true belief. And it's,
And you have a backup for
What
that.
kind of a gap? How much of a gap
Could be in.
between what they're submitting and what you're submitting?
I don't know.
When Barry was here let's say a month ago, he was down to like 900,000, so.
No, those are
Still.
possibilities.
Well, I mean, he went through the things that he would do to,
Whatever Dr. Rabinovich, much in a strange way like myself, can make his recommendations, it's up to the school
their
committee.
committee.
But, you know, if you're asking me for a number, I don't know, it's gonna be their number brought forth.
Yeah, you're right.
Help me understand this. If their number is $1.5 million over the budget, the number the town approves, they've got to manage to $1.5 million less. I mean,
If town meeting votes their budget, which is less than what they've requested, they have to vote that budget. If town meeting votes a larger budget, essentially, my understanding is we must deduct that from the town side.
Yeah. It just depends on whether or not, which school number we bring forward, the school committee's number or the town's number. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, it's the school committee's number, the town administrators. I don't like putting that fashion, because I don't believe it's
Sorry,
an,
you're right.
us versus them, but they have a certain number that they need, and there's a certain number that's available.
So have you got another iteration of the town side that's $1.5 million less?
I don't believe $1.5 million is the number, but we're looking at a substantial number, so it would be a severe reduction in services.
Okay. So you're anticipated, you can go either way if you have to.
Not
And you've
really,
planned, with
no.
a plan, I mean, you planned it through and so, and
Can I ask the question for the 19th time? Have you had any guidance from the selectmen on the priorities?
I will be bringing them forward a list of what would have to be cut, and I believe I'll receive a recommendation on that.
In a meeting, right? Or in a public meeting, not individually, right?
I would believe that'd be the format for it.
Mrs. Donahue?
To clarify that point, that will be a list that you generated
Right.
based on numbers in your budget.
Yeah, and to be honest, my thought process of it is, I would go through with some of the departments, some of them that, such as, let's say, the inspectional services department, where if you're cutting out of them, there's a certain dollar value that you'll probably lose in revenue and such. There's other departments on there that don't generate revenue but are public safety. There's some that do generate revenue that are public safety but are outside of our, of our general fund budget, so.
We understand that, and I know you understand that, and this is where the Board of Selectmen, who are the representatives of the public, need to step forth with what are our values, what does our community want? Our community has spoken very loudly in the past that they don't want capital items. That's why we are here. This is not necessarily the fault of a previous administration, a past finance committees. Town meeting has rejected capital items for a long, long time.
Until they're broke.
And then they just want to put bubble gum on them, no offense, Tom. But that is the mentality of the town, and that is what the Board of Selectmen should be tied into, that feeling. Let's face it,
But we're already there. The only thing we have is 88,000 in one article. There's no other capital on here at all.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying, but we're getting we're still at the same point. We have to make vicious cuts. Let's not call them painful, they're vicious at this point, if we have to try to bridge this gap. We
But that's
still
up
don't
to-
know where they're gonna come from.
That's up to the town administrator and the superintendent. What he's been asked for is his recommendations as to where, actually been asked for the input from the department heads,
Okay.
is what he's saying.
But we're not getting the input from the community, I guess is my frustration. We're just going to have to defend it without that.
I don't necessarily.
Our problem is what do we print in the budget, and it appears that, the proposed budget that came to us, this is the new, this is the next version, this is what we need to make a decision on going to the book, unless he comes up with something before next week. Everybody agree on that?
I agree.
That's the only thing that we can do, but next week is the absolute deadline. Now, since we have this, we have something to work with. For the time being, this is what would probably go in there, but we don't need to vote on it tonight. I just want to bring everybody up to date. Again, there's been some, there's already one, we just cut 141, right? See, some people are gonna be unhappy with that.
Yeah, there is, to let everybody know, the departments have not been advised of what those cuts really are. It was going through their departments and cutting where I believed was money not even available, but where it could be. So that will be in speaking with them and then asking them, what could you run your department on at
Okay, but as it stands, this is the document we have. This is what will go in the warrant unless you advise us differently for next week's meeting, at which point we would vote those numbers. Okay. Thank you. Bruce.
So
Yeah.
we're about 3% out of whack. Is that what we're talking about?
We're not far from where we originally were.
Huh? Did
We're
I?
not far from where we originally were. But we used level funding on the schools, so.
Did we even talk about the dog bylaws?
Now, I'd like to skip down to the 2014 special town meeting, Article 1. I would say we should postpone 20 until next week.
Article 1, Mr. Chair, I don't have transfers listed right now. And, that's, I believe the last meeting, I said I don't believe I'll have them available for you before they go to print. Because I think when we did the transfers last year, it was in May. It was at a May special. This is roughly a month ahead of time. And it's a matter of time.
Comments?
I don't, there's no sense in voting on it because we have nothing to vote on.
No, we have nothing. We
No,
don't have any
we have
numbers.
nothing.
Will it be ready for town meeting?
We will have a list for town meeting that, we're going to make sure, we'll try and make sure it encompasses everything on there. So we don't have to worry about, 5,000 or 3% municipal relief act issues.
Is this the 6 o'clock meeting on the night of the town meeting?
It's the 601 meeting.
It's the 6:01 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I just can't understand why we don't have anything, none of the transfers?
Well, it's only April, I mean, it's only March still, but.
To need transfers are to mean that their budgets, that they will be out of line with their budgets. So the transfer should be the last act.
So really, it should be done in June.
No, okay.
It
Well,
can't be.
it can't be if it has to be. In June, there's certain amounts that can be transferred from each account based on state law. That's the 5,000 or 3%.
Right.
I
All
think,
right, however, the legislative body can do it at any time. So basically what we've done in the past is we've tried to fit it in either, sometimes it's been done in the fall meetings, but recently it's been done as before we open, the next year's town meeting. We do the special first and then we do the town meeting. And that's how we handled them last time, we did them on special, correct?
Yeah.
All right, and that allows us to not run into the problem of violating the law because we have no place to transfer it because of the $5,000 bill.
I see.
It looks like we don't have the information, so, it's whatever you have, it's 601, and then it's gonna be a case of put it before the town, they decide what they wanted. The legislative body decides whether or not they wanted to move that. That's not something for the FinCom and the selectmen.
We
We'd
should,
like to see it ahead of time, so we could have recommended or something. And then the question arises also in my mind of, if it was budgeted wrong last year, and we're coming in the last minute, and we got another budget number coming up that was probably based on the projected number, how good is the new budget number? That's here, another here and there.
maybe we should
That's
make,
just the problem.
maybe we should make sure that we explain the situation though, clearly at town meeting, look, this is the way things fall, and there's no way to avoid this.
We have our disclaimer that we use. We have in the past voted with all abstentions, and then on the basis that since we had no numbers, we couldn't issue an opinion. We
Right,
wanted-
yeah,
We want to do, why don't we wait until, we can do that at the last minute?
yeah,
And the report, we can just put it in saying that we didn't have it and don't put it in. Everybody agree on that?
Yep.
I do.
Rather than putting a full abstention.
Right.
Oh, fun. Let's do Article 5 first, the community events appropriation.
Yeah, the community events, I didn't have the information on there. This was, they had submitted an article for town meeting and made sure that was inserted. It's the old language of the article with the makeups on there. I do believe they have enough money within their fund currently to fund their anticipated ventures, or I don't know what you would call, what the donations.
Does the article need to be reworded?
Support. I think we would have to, it would be up to whether the moderator would allow that, because it would be a pure just dollar value, I think, on there, rather than a makeup of such and such a, 70% hotel motel, 40% parking, because it realistically isn't gonna come from that.
So we'll address the issue with the motion.
Yeah.
Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
I move favorable action on Article 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I want to abstain too, because I don't understand.
Oh, it's 3-0-2. Article 2, Healthcare Trust Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is requesting that we transfer from free cash into the health trust fund the amount of $1,284,829. That does not make the trust fund full. We'll have to take certain actions. If we wanted to fully fund the trust to what the actual 75-25 split would be, we would have to make an appropriation of $2,695,860. We do not have that available. We do have the free cash, so my recommendation was that we transfer free cash in the 1.284 million to the health trust fund. That makes the employees' portion whole. We owe them approximately $183,000. And then have an employee-only holiday of $470,344. That would leave the town portion at $1,101,517, or 75%, and the employee portion at $367,172. I just want to reiterate the point that transferring that sum does not fix the issue. We will have to do a holiday or keep on funding more in there. It does help with the solvency of the fund.
Any questions?
No, I have so many, but I don't even know if you can ask them. How does this happen?
You don't fund the proper amount into the trust fund budget. It's not about taking money out. You can't ever write checks out of there. You just cannot fund a certain portion going in there. So what happened with the last health trust fund, when they had the healthcare holiday, it had been recommended to rebalance the fund by doing an employee holiday of $454,000. However, there was a town and employee holiday which left $654,000 in the trust fund. Of that $654,000, if you went to what the split is, it wasn't 75-25. It was actually, there was $837,000 in the trust, which means technically the town owes $183,000 to the employee portion. So we must rebalance it, make the employees whole. I just want to reiterate, it's not like people took money out. Doesn't make it any better, but people say you took money out of there. It's not funding the portion in there. You can't ever write checks essentially out of there.
I know that much, but I guess my point is, if it was recommended that we had an employee-only holiday and we took a town holiday, how does that happen?
By town meeting vote.
So something, obviously this was not known before we took that town meeting vote.
I believe that it was not known by who would have voted on it, because I would have said, if my understanding is, if the recommendation came out and somebody said you only need to do a $454,000 employee holiday, don't do the other part at town meeting floor, if that was what was told to people, I don't think they would have done it, but I do know the DOR came out strongly against the town portion.
Before town
Wrote
meeting?
us-
Yes.
Before town meeting,
Yes.
wrote us a letter on it.
Was that discussed in any form or fashion?
I believe it was
Yes, it
discussed. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we should have ever done that with the money to begin with, but I just,
We didn't have any other opportunities.
We were also told the money was there. which is-
Yes,
which is
yes, we
source of
were,
great
we
frustration.
were. We
well,
would, we
that's
would,
why I'm trying to figure out the difference between what we were told and what actually is happening.
I think that goes to theory as opposed to
Practice?
this committee not actually ever seeing bank statements and money in the bank. The theory was there's an excess there. Nobody liked that as a choice. We all knew it wasn't a good idea, but it came to us at the last minute to get a balanced budget, that there was excess money.
and we all knew that the DOR was against it. But
But
we,
not as an employee only, just
Exactly.
against the town portion,
Yeah,
right? Which
exactly.
they weren't against the town.
Yeah.
They were against the town portion, but they weren't against the employee
Employee.
portion. That was never expressed to us.
Yeah,
No.
that's not,
Right.
that's not what I was hearing.
The other piece is that what was presented to this committee was that the fund was $3 million, right? Which was overfunded made it overfunded by at least $1 million. This $2 million was more than an adequate
Absolutely right.
reserve, so that's part of why that was taken. This shortfall is over a number of years though, too. This is not a single year item, right? This goes
No.
back to 2008,
That is correct.
right? And we actually came down, this 473.44 is very close to what the balance was at the end of 2010, correct, or 2011?
Yeah,
2011.
the 454,000, the reason that recommendation was made was that the splits were off. That would have
Right.
made it back to 75-25. I believe in 2011, they funded, fiscal 2011, they funded just 5.5 million on their straight amount, which wasn't enough to cover the whole amount. I also.
The 470 was a cumulative number from
Correct.
2008, okay.
I believe if the, in 2008, the town versus employee splits were 74-26. Then in 2009, they went to 70-30. In 2010, they stayed at 70-30. In 2011, they went to 63-37. And in 2012, essentially went to negative 28%, 128% on there. So you can see the healthcare holiday, why it essentially had a double impact was the splits were already off before that happened. If the splits were well within line, we would have had probably a different outcome. I think there's either maybe a lack of general awareness of that part of it. That's why I appreciate the historical data that the auditors have given us on this. It's also why when I looked at our number this year, and we're saying it's been drastically increasing all over, I believe it's probably the first time we fully funded it. Dental as well in there, that's one of the big things. We received from, you do a 3-year dental bid. I had a guy come in who wanted to speak to me about our health insurances. I said, that's fine, we use a certain company, we're all set, we're looking at some other forms. And he said, yes, but it's for your dental. That's interesting, I haven't received a dental bill before. And we're seeing 327,000. It's the total amount's about 433, but 75-25 split leads to about 327 on there, which means that is why today we have, even with going to either the split change or the plan designs of the GIC, we still have a bill of potentially over $6.7 million.
How is this ever gonna get explained to the town meeting? I mean, this has gotta be run, spot, run for the town to understand
Yeah.
how we're in such,
You're gonna have to make a chart and maybe even a cartoon character going through this, because this is clearly, there's 3 things going on here at one time that are all affecting us. You've got the splits that are incorrect, you got a healthcare holiday over here, you got one that should have been taken and now you're going to have to pay it back. or not pay it back, but the employees, we're gonna have to use our free cash, and the employees are going to get a healthcare holiday to make up their difference. So there's a timeline here, but it's not, it's going like this. It's all over the place.
The beginning point is a historic mismanagement of the fund.
Yeah.
Part of my recommendations that we should probably, even though if we had been funding it at the right levels, we've done well on the health trust. We've, claims wise, we've actually, it has worked. However, whether it's myself, or some, the previous or the next person, there is a temptation from the administrator's spot, it looks historically, to sort of resolve these budget issues. And it's, if we speak about kicking the can down the road, this is the next section. Now we have to come up with that. It saved you jobs, it saved services, and there's something to be said about what it's done. But however, today we are left with the reality of using what would have been an excellent amount of free cash and putting it back in. And the one thing I want to explain is we don't have free cash because we under budgeted last year, or over budgeted,
Right.
excuse me, on that. We were lucky enough in our revenues. We had 2 years of EMS recycle, EMS receipts. They hadn't been moved over in the previous year. That was worth a value of approximately $600,000. We're not going to get that again.
Nope.
There were some other things that came in that were one-time boons, if you will, and we cleaned up some of the previous messes, bring them forward. So this would have, in theory, if the splits and everything had worked out, this would have been an excellent opportunity to manage some of our capital needs.
I'm not gonna belabor the point, but you may have saved jobs, and I know it probably did save jobs when it first came up, but it didn't really save them long-term. All it did is short-term fix.
But we knew that.
Well,
Everybody
but my
knew.
point
We
is,
knew it.
but my point is, that's why we're here today doing this. Because, nobody wants to make
It was a
this.
short-term fix on inaccurate information because we know that the
Right.
financial system is.
Well, I hadn't got that far yet, but.
Well, but that's part of the history, all right? And that's also part of the history as well. It took Powers and Sullivan quite a bit of time to put this together too, correct? Because they had to go back and literally go back through all the entries that were made, et cetera. This wasn't a case of going out and pulling out, 6 trial balances and saying, oh, look, the number's off. This was going back to understand everything. How much was cumulatively brought forward, how what the problems were. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everybody said, hey, if we're gonna save the jobs, and our trust fund is over-reserved at $3 million, are available funds, right, that either could be used to reduce the budget or need to go back to somebody.
I'm, okay.
So, I mean,
We
I
don't-
was kicking the can down the road. We knew it.
Not blaming, I'm just
No,
saying,
we,
it's just.
I think we all did it knowing, I know we knew it, and I'm sure that the town administrator, now, he knew. I mean, we knew it was a short-term fix, and many of us thought that we should just fix it right now, stop the bleeding. But we didn't. We chose to belabor it, making some difficult decisions, hoping things would turn around and get better.
There was also some question with layoffs, et cetera, that we were gonna put even further drain. At that point, the $3 million might not have been enough, because people being laid off or knowing they're being laid off, file more claims. That's a fact.
Exactly.
That was an absolute fact.
Well, I guess my concern is that we make it as clear as we can as to what happened and the remedies that we've taken. It isn't that just the whole thing, been going down the road and the wheel all of a sudden fell off.
We're going to, and I'm sorry, Joe.
No, it's, the difficult part of it is going to make sure that the town understands that this is really a positive corrective step that we're taking. And why we have to take it, or how we got here, and then why it's needed to.
We're in a strange sort of situation because in order to actually do the healthcare holiday for the employees, you almost need to enact it now, but how do you enact that if I don't know if the 1.284 will be transferred in a town meeting? We could all agree on something and think that that's what needs to be done, not saying that everybody does, but you can have somebody at town meeting amend that and change the budget to take X amount from free cash into something, and that would be pretty well devastating. So, we're left in a bit of a holding pattern, but it doesn't, and I'm sorry, I said it doesn't work that way to to pay money out of there. That may be one of the things that we have to look at for getting the money back to the employees. What I meant was we hadn't written checks out of there, but we may have to strongly look at if we need to rebalance it for this fiscal year. How do you do that? And that's another level that is an administrative nightmare.
Yeah.
It's part of the recommendation is, as I said, to move to maybe a consortium or back to the Mayflower Group, which was the old Plymouth County Healthcare, and have them running it and just essentially sending us a bill.
Is there anybody in the accounting firm that would be a particularly lucid explainer of this, so that some third parties making the presentation rather than?
I believe that
No accountant's lucid, give me a break.
the draft management letter that we have goes through a substantial chart and timeline on there that, may be confusing in some parts of it, but pretty well lays it out. And as we go through the process, try and make sure that we get the final management letter and can provide that to everybody, put it out there, make sure all the groups have it online, in the papers. I think that's going to go a long way to explaining it, because it gives the historical data of each year. But Powers and Sullivan, the principal and principals, Jim Powers, as well as Craig Peacock, I'm sure they'll be down to, and yes, I would suggest probably a joint meeting on there of a couple of the interested parties.
I would just hate to have you stand up and take the heat for something that.
At town meeting, that's what I'm going.
That's what he gets the big bucks for.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Tom, I find myself interrupting you all the time, so I apologize on that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine how to get this across without looking.
The selectmen aware of all the facts?
They have been provided a copy of the draft management letter.
And have they given you guidance as to which of your alternatives to follow?
They were presented that last night for the
Did
first
they
time.
vote on it?
I don't believe they voted on that.
So you have no guidance on this right now?
As of right now, no. I have what our auditors have written in there.
Didn't you vote on it last night?
Last night,
Helen?
it was presented last night, Derek presented different options. I believe it was left that his recommendation of what to do is what we said to go ahead with.
Yeah.
He'd given us different options through and presented what
Was
was the
it,
best.
which is the $1.2 million or whatever the heck you.
Well, the $1.2 million, but also this option 1, 2, and 3 going
Yeah.
on, the steps that did, and we agreed to go ahead with the steps.
$1.2 million and then 400,000, that's the deal.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything without the 1 million too.
The $1 million is critical.
Yeah, that's the
Can't do
part.
anything without the 1 million too. Well, Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action, and then so you can discuss it.
I'll do it this time. Why, you getting tired of doing the motion?
This
I make a
one's-
motion
This one just
to
sticks in my craw, I'm sorry.
approve, hold on, I'll get the exact wording because I don't want to screw it up. Oh, heck, I'll screw it
I
up.
vote favorable, I move favorable action on Article 2.
Thank you.
Just
Second. The transfer of free cash.
Discussion?
I think we discussed it today.
Well, what we haven't discussed is what we feel about whether we should support it or not.
Well, I guess you're gonna find out right now, aren't you?
No, that's what I said, what's the discussion, or are you just gonna vote?
Let's vote.
Want to just vote?
Yep.
Any comments from all, make sure everybody's, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0.
That covered that. Man, you breathed,
So,
huh?
so we're in the water with you.
Well, somebody's gotta write the explanation to that too,
No.
on our side, our recommendation. Not the
Yeah,
explanation, but our recommendation.
I'll take a stab at it. I think that's penance.
That's penance. The last item we have is the Article 28, the dog bylaw.
I can't, I have to abstain because I have a dog.
So,
I don't know what else to say. I've never heard, I don't know what else to say.
Pardon?
Nobody's explaining it to us.
Well, if you read the volume, you would have understood.
I've read it. I don't understand it.
No, I don't either.
This is state law. I mean, we got bigger fish to fry on this.
Does it have a financial impact on the town?
It says
Technically?
with
It
fines
could on
and
the
stuff.
citizens, sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Colin reminded me, I think we said we were gonna put it off till next week, what, have
Yeah.
somebody come in and discuss it? Put it off, to try to get more members here. All right, we'll just postpone that one. All right, new business liaison reports. Anybody have any liaison reports?
I was gonna make a recommendation that we assign Bonnie half the articles and Dominic the other half to write them.
Dave
And
Trudell.
Dave Trudell as well. And
That's all up to the chairman.
Ooh.
Not to sit and write those out, and who gets what. Or you could sit and write it out.
No, I'm gonna-
On liaison reports, it was mentioned tonight that there was, I'm on the action committee, so now I don't know what happened. The action committee voted to recommend to the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, all right, that the plan, the three-step plan was the best way to go with the 6 buses being taken out of service. And also, they have a bid out there for 3 used buses, totaling some $90,000 after a couple of trade-ins. There's some stuff that has to be settled on that.
It was an
All right.
8-bus reduction, wasn't it? 24
It
to
would be a-
16?
It would be a 9-bus.
9, but
A
25
9-bus
to 16?
Well, they went from 22 to 16 as far as when they changed the transportation for the kids. That reduces 6 buses. All right,
That's the 3-step.
that,
Then the
right.
1 mile is the,
3-tier.
That includes, that's the 3-tier. But then also, 90,000's already been approved by town meeting for them to buy used or new vehicles. They went out for an RFP, they received a bid that they can buy 3 used buses, 2007s. All right, 2 of them had mileage, I think, I forget the mileage. 2 have less mileage than the third one. All right, but instead of buying 2 buses, they can get 3. So the net effect is, they actually take 9 old buses off the road. Now, part of when we were talking about the transportation fund as well, the revolver, a good deal of that revolver was going to repairing buses. All right, so yes, it's a Band-Aid, but it gets us in a situation where a third of the fleet's been, over a third of the fleet's been replaced with newer buses. All right, the motion also stipulated that this plan was only for, recommendation was only for 2014, and that it had to be reevaluated for 2015. And a permanent plan has to come up. I mean, you're at the point now where you can start talking about, buying buses on an annual basis, brand new or something, if that's so desired. Now, that was after the committee also had gone through, and RFPs were done for privatization. All right, and there were 4, I think I mentioned it before, there were 4 different scenarios requested. All right, the only one that 2 bus companies decided to bid on was the first proposal only, which was the total program. They would not do anything, cutting it up, dividing it up, doing half and half, splitting it. They didn't want any part of any of that. All right, and the best that we could get for a bid was like $400,000 more than what it would cost us to do it on our own. And that was the lowest bid. The next bid was $500,000.
Wow.
So we don't have the money there either. So this is not the perfect solution. Also because the fact that as they were talking, they need to evaluate who's going to be riding on these buses, because this is packing these buses as tight as they can pack them. All right, but experience has been that all buses aren't full on a daily basis, et cetera. So they think they have some latitude, but they may have to do some scrambling. That would also leave us in a situation if we pull 6 buses off the road, we have some backups in case of breakdowns, et cetera. It appears to be the absolute best proposal they could come up, so that's why the committee recommended it to the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. But it's not the action committee's decision. They're not responsible for this. They went through all the steps, all the investigations, all the discussions, all the spitting at one another. All right, and that's the best that the school could. Well, I think the transportation department did a lot of work to bring this together, as did Dr. Rabinovitz.
Well, it sounds like that the guy who runs it,
Tetro.
Tetro.
was got it down to the ground roots level for the solution.
Well, Dr. Rabinovitz made the recommendation to go to the 2-tier, and Tetro figured out how to do it. The other thing too, everybody comes up and says, well, 98% or 95% of the other towns provide the transportation, why are we the only 6? Well, guess what? At this point, we're taking advantage of the fact that we're the only 6 towns. We're not that last little piece, there's plenty of available buses. All right, that people are willing to bid to us for reasonable prices. That's also, you may also like to know the fact, don't forget, we also investigated, the buses usually break down not because of the transmissions and the engines and the frames, they break down generally because of the body. All right, and we investigated a situation in Maine where a National Guard affiliated Maine affiliated company can actually replace those bodies for $30,000, and that would extend the life of the bus for 7 years. So if we look at the buses that we're talking about, we could get a good 10, 12 years out of those with a replacement, et cetera. You know, nobody's recommending that we hold on to it forever. That's why the renewal for next year, but this was the best that we could come up in light of the financial condition of the town. That's our recommendation. Now, it's up to the selectmen and the school committee as to what they do. As he said, they have not voted on the 3-tier program, and they have not necessarily, they're pretty sure on the buses. They just have to go through the town administrator
The
who does the
selectmen don't
procurement.
meet next week, do they?
No, they will not meet until after.
The election.
I'll just bring you up to date as to what happened at that meeting. And I sit on the capital meeting because we remember this committee, all right? And then I wound up on the action committee as rep for the capital planning. So just bringing that back to you. That's why we have no liaison.
Just to confirm that I'm thinking right, the police cars we're going with the existing fleet of police cars.
Yes?
And the radios, we're not doing anything about radios. And we bought the defibrillators. Did all that happen?
I don't know if the defibrillators have
I
been
don't
purchased,
think
they
so.
were
I
approved.
think
Because
we were.
defibrillators just came in from some pretty good heat in the national press about
Now, capital planning also had a meeting, and, you know, the only thing that's on the warrant is the 8,000 for the gas. All right, they are raising, when they make their report, they will raise the issue of the fact that we are not replacing 14 police cruisers, we are not replacing an ambulance, that we don't have one to replace it. All right, that our portable radios are past their life age. All right, and some of what we were using had to be returned to another town that had lent them to us. All right, that we have IT equipment that has broken down and not been replaced and needs to be replaced. All right, and the last thing has to do with one of the schools, and we're going to check on that and see. There's some question as to the PA system for emergencies for the Deacon School. And so they will list 4 or 5 items that are really what we like to call mission critical. They have the potential of somebody getting hurt. But we don't have any money in there to cover them.
It's a great time to borrow money.
But you gotta still pay it back.
But you gotta have money, yeah, you gotta have, because you,
But by the time we pay it back, inflation will be off the charts and we'll
right,
pay
but
it
so what are we gonna do?
Well,
Cut 17 employees so we can buy the capital that they, oh, wait a minute, that's.
As our town treasurer repeatedly said,
You guys are financial guys. I'm
as our
just-
treasurer repeatedly says,
Joe.
our problem is not whether or not we have the available credit line.
Yeah.
It's out there. The only problem is, it's just like your charge card. You may have, a credit card worth $100,000, but if you can't afford to pay a $10 monthly payment, guess what? And that's where we are.
You know, because this last year, I believe it was the year before last, when Andrew, our former town administrator, sat here and talked about how much debt ceiling we had. And I was sitting there going, well, that's great, you know, I have a $25,000 credit card then, so let's just borrow all the way up to that 25. It doesn't make any sense.
And eventually you get rated anyway. Once you start borrowing into it, somebody comes by and does a rating, and then you got a double problem there, 'cause you know what's gonna happen to that. As long as we can borrow from the state, we're in great shape,
At my age, it's,
All right, approval of minutes, meeting minutes, I'm sorry, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I did have one other issue to throw out on, and it's liaison reports. Evidently, there's been a problem with, I appointed Bonnie Catulli to be on the search committee for the superintendent, and the new school superintendent, and I'm not sure if she's really interested or not, but in case of a backup, is anyone else interested? And I'll certainly give them a call, give you a call this week to find out, because they're meeting Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
I have a meeting tomorrow night
Yeah,
for the town accountant.
okay, so you're already, okay. Is anyone else?
I'd be interested, but the only reason I would be is because I have a daughter who's a teacher. I mean, my qualifications are not much further than that.
Mhm. Okay, so as a backup, if Bonnie's not interested, I'll give you a call, Tom?
Sure. Jeff Swift would probably shoot you.
I can think of worse,
That's all I have.
That's all you had? All right, can we have minutes of March 20th?
I move to approve the minutes of March 20th.
March 20th.
I second.
Marilyn is the second. Anybody have any additions or corrections to what they've read? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's 500. Next meeting is has to be next week.
Well, let's make
During
sure
the first of the
everybody gets
week-
here.
Well, the other side too, and may I caution everybody, next week when we come in, we need those recommendations because, and actually we need them even sooner.
Yep.
As soon as you get an assignment, you need to write it up and get it to Kelly because she's got to get it into the right format so that it can go to the printer
Well, let's
next
start.
week from
What-
Friday.
Yeah, what about the appointment of doing these?
That's your job.
I know that.
Well, I
Well-
figured it was getting to be, it's already past the hour of 10.
It is?
Yeah.
Yep, it's 10 after 10. so
Oh, I'll
I
start
figured-
turning it into a pumpkin in a minute.
Now, see, when you have food, you get to work later, how about that?
No, it's not working.
Yeah, I think what I'll do, I'm gonna take a look at it, and I'm gonna have it emailed, and I'll have Kelly email you all with.
I was gonna say, you and Kelly work together to see what we already have, explanations for all the housekeeping articles, right?
Housekeeping,
Right.
like say.
Yep.
Okay, and you'll be hearing from me the next day or two, as far as
Okay.
getting going on those. Hopefully, we can have a lot of those even done by next week that we've already voted on.
There's not as many this time than we tackled in the past.
Oh, it's still a,
Actually, well, it's still a task.
it's a test.
Oh, well, I'm standing. Go ahead, I just
That's all
want to
right, I was
stand.
gonna say, greater concern to me, as equal concern to me is writing up the articles is how we should present them at town meeting. I understand that the articles put forth by the proponent of the article,
Yes.
but I've had several town meeting attendees speak to me in the past that they would like to hear more from the finance committee.
Well, I think we addressed that last year, and we put, if it was one that people were really strong, and we had one of,
Probably got it.
pro and con, if people wanted to do that.
I'd like to make sure that we as a committee stand up to speak.
Instead of sitting there speaking.
Well, instead of just sitting there.
I think we have in the past. I think we've made it quite clear. Because our last year was a good job.
Seeing no other business,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500.
Who would oppose?